Hi, it's Nancy with MumMum's. We're going to make another bow today. And the ribbons I've selected are these right here. This was my inspiration ribbon, or what will be the focus ribbon for this particular bow. And these will be the supporting characters, if you will. This one came from TMI Gifts. You can find them online. This one came from Sam's Club, and all the others came from Craft Outlet. Craft Outlet has, I think, over 3,000 different ribbons you can choose from. So you can have a lot of fun on that site finding a variety of ribbons. Okay, so I am going to move this out of the way so we can get started. I have pre-cut all the ribbons that I need for this particular bow. Each ribbon is 63 inches long, and the total width of the bow once finished is going to be about 12 inches wide. And the wire that I use is 18 inches long, it's 22 gauge. I buy my wire at Hobby Lobby in a pack that comes with, I think, 120 pieces of wire. I fold it ahead of time so it's all ready to go once my bow is ready to be wrapped in wire. So let's get started. I'm going to start with this green stripe. I'm going to have a 13-inch tail. 0 is down here, and I don't want to be measuring from there. So I'm going to use 10 as my 0 and measure 13 inches from there, which brings me to 23. And then I'm going to have 6-inch loops. So I'm going to measure out 12 from 10, brings me 22. So measuring out 12 will give me a 6-inch loop. I'm going to measure 12 inches again for another loop, twist, and measure out 12 again for my third loop, and that gives me a second tail. And I can just check and make sure that things are looking pretty much like they are. My loops are pretty even. They look fairly even. Okay, and then I'm going to add my next ribbon. Now I have, if you'll notice, two loops on top, 1 loop on the bottom. We're going to do the opposite now. We're going to put 1 loop on top and 2 on the bottom. So we'll start again with 13-inch tail. If you have too tight of a grip, you're going to end up with a cramp. So you need to make sure that with your grip, you're not holding it too terribly tightly. Likewise, if you're holding too loosely, you may very well lose your ribbons, so you have to be very careful about that. Twist and make your last loop. And you're done with that particular ribbon. You can check and make sure that they are pretty much, 6 inches. Now we're going to go with this bright, pretty ribbon. So I had 2 on the bottom, 1 up top. So now we're going to go with 2 on top, 1 on the bottom, starting with 13-inch tail again. So come up to 23, put that in there. And you'll see that I'm going to start going further into, deeper into the crook of my thumb and finger. The more that I pull some ribbons in, bring that on the bottom, twist, come out 12 inches on top, and have my tail. And that's okay. So, see how we're coming further in. All right, now we're going to add the yellow. Coming out 13 inches. And I'm not going to twist because this pattern is the same on both sides. Can't really tell which is the front or which is the back, so I'm not going to bother twisting on this one. 12 inches. Do 12 inches again. 12 inches gives me that 6-inch loop. my tail out of the way, and I'm ready for this. I decided to bring this particular ribbon in twice in my bow, since it is the bow that I'm wanting as my feature. So I have the yellow as 2 loops on the bottom, 1 on top. So now I'm wanting to do 2 loops on the top with this one. So if you notice, with each ribbon that I'm introducing, I'm just doing opposite of what I did before. We started off 2 on top, 1 on the bottom. The next time we did 2 on the bottom, 1 on top. You just go back and forth with each ribbon that you add. So there's my 10, go to 12. I have 1 on top, so 1 on bottom. My ribbons were all in the way and I couldn't tell if I needed to go on the top or go on the bottom. Okay, and now my last, again, 13 inches for the tail. And this ribbon also is the same front and back, so I'm not going to be twisting. The reason you twist is because you're wanting to keep the right side of the ribbon on the outside of the loop at all times, and that's why you always twist each time that you make the loop. So yeah, we're checking to make sure that the loops are pretty much the same, and they are. Okay, here comes the tricky part. When you hold it by hand and you're adding your wire, oftentimes it can be a little bit difficult to get that wire secured absolutely in the center. So what I do is I bring my wire to what I feel is the middle, and I pull it down tight, keep my fingers there, come around behind. I'm going to hold it secure, see if my wires aren't even, so I'm going to pull the short side up. There, they're pretty even now. And I'm going to twist a couple of times. Now before I tighten my wire up, what I'm going to do is do a check real quick to make sure that I've gotten centered. And you'll know it's centered if your loops are matching up, and they're not. So that means I need to pull my wire over. I did not get it centered. Now when you do a bow by hand like that, that's something that you'll need to do is check. I'm going to do a check on some other colors, because it's possible that I might have gotten that particular color a little off. See, now these are matching up. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to come with this pink, and because this one is so off, that's an easy fix to do, because that's a pretty large discrepancy. I'm going to take and pull, whoops, pulling the wrong one. Pull on them, and pull on them from one of the other loops, and then bring them up and see if they're now matching up a little better. And see what a quick and easy adjustment that is. And now I'm just going to check some of my other loops, see if they're matching up. That one is not. So again, I'm going to get this pink out of the way to make sure I'm pulling up the right loops that go together, because I use this color more than once. Okay, this is the one that belongs. Okay, so again, I'm going to have to adjust. Okay. Let's flip it over. And not everybody does this step. The reason I do it is partly because I'm pretty particular about wanting to make sure that I have things as even as possible. It makes a much prettier bow when you've got all your loops the same size. And I have that middle one still. And if you need to, you can borrow from a tail, because when the tails are a little uneven, that just adds a little bit of character. And I'm still not getting that loop to match up with the others. And you just keep filling with it until you got things, so everybody's coming up to be about the height that you want them to be. Okay, let's check the blue. Whoops, did I do the yellow? Yes, the yellow's fine. Let's do the blue. The blue is fine. All right, so now the next step that I'm going to do is find this. I'm going to hold it real secure and tighten this wire up with a few good twists. Okay, now this is ready to start fluffing. This is what's called a fluff box. It's nice and sturdy. It's got some weight to it. And you take the wire and you pull it underneath this hook like that. You wrap the wire around and you get started fluffing. Now, I'm not going to worry too much about the tails right now. They're going to get situated after the fact. Right now they're kind of in the way, so I'm just going to kind of pull them off to the side for now. What I'm mainly interested in is getting the loops. The loops are my main concern right now. That's what I'm wanting to work on first. So I'm wanting to get my loops up and get all of the tails out of the way. Okay, so let's work on the loops. So one thing when you are shaping your bow, you want to try to make sure that you've got loops that are patterns that are going to separate other patterns. So I don't want, for instance, I don't want two greens to be side by side. So what I'm going to do is pull a blue over in between them, have a yellow in between them. Let's bring a pink in between them. So you shift your colors around. And so they aren't necessarily you shift your colors and your patterns around so they're not necessarily side by side anywhere within the bow. And that gives your bow some character and some depth. Now, because you've tightened it very securely with your wire, you have the freedom to really twist and move these loops to go where you want to move them and position them where you need to position them. So don't be afraid to tug on them. With the way this particular bow is made, the tails come out not at the back completely. They come out at different portions and in different places all throughout the bow. And because of that, that is why we are getting, that's why we're getting them, you know, kind of poking up in different places, in different spots. That's why it's a little more difficult to fluff this particular bow than ordinary bows, and that's okay. So you just keep pulling and adjusting and moving all your different patterns around, getting them placed where they look right to you. Again, where they're not right next to each other, where they're split up. So there's other patterns dividing them and splitting them up. I think I'm going to move this yellow around a little bit more. Yeah, that looks a little better. It's like I have a blue here on the side, a blue over here, a blue over here. I'm trying to get this pink divided up a little bit more too. I'm bringing this yellow over here to separate him a little bit more. Okay, now and you could probably fiddle with it all day. This, to me, sometimes is what takes up the most amount of time in doing a bow, is the fluffing. Getting everything situated exactly where you're wanting the colors to go. Let's see if I can lift him up. No, he's not wanting to come up. Okay, so the next step that we're going to do before I take it off of my fluff box is I'm going to cut the tails. Well, yeah, I think I do need it off my box first, because what I want to see is, let's move that out of the way. You reach up there at the base to get your tails to turn and face the direction you want them to turn. Ideally, what I want is for there to be a color like a blue to fall on this side and a blue to be on this side, a yellow tail over here, a yellow tail to come over here. There's going to be 4 of these rainbow colors. And when you're fiddling with the tails, that means, as you can see how I'm holding this, it does mess up your loops some. That's fine. You can go back and readjust your loops after you get your tails where you want them to be. The main thing with putting it on the fluff box first and getting it fluffed, you're basically getting the position of your loops where you're wanting them to be. Okay, now I'm going to try to get them all to come forward. You, my friend, need to come over here. There we go. See how easy that was? I just shifted him around. That's the beauty of using wired ribbon. It's very important if you want to get into making ribbons, making bows, is that you not only buy quality ribbon, but you buy wired ribbon. Wired ribbon gives you the opportunity to really maneuver things around and have placement. It's much more difficult to have placement if you're not using wired edge ribbon. Okay, and this one I need to reach up here and twist because he was laying upside down. Okay. And again, I'm going to see if I can bring these behind. Bring you up front. See if I can bring you up front. There, that's a little better. Okay, so with these tails, what I'm going to do, I've got, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. I think I pretty much have one color each on either side. I am going to cut at an angle. You could dovetail them, which is when you have that notch on the tail. You could leave them straight if you wanted to, but I think it adds a lot more character when you do cut them. Let's see. Okay, now we're going to cut in the opposite direction. Now your bow is all ready and done. You can leave things just as is, like this. Or if you wanted to, you can give your bow more character even, go a little step further. And you can decide to curl your tails, give them a little bit of a curl like this. And it's real easy to do. You just run it through your fingers like that. And see how the difference that can make on your bow, going in that direction. Another idea that you can do is rolling the tail up and then pulling it out a little bit. And that gives you a curly tail or corkscrew tail, however you want to call it. And then pulling it out just a little bit. So these are a couple options of what you can do with your tails. And see how whether it's the straight or the corkscrew or the curled, it really changes the look of your bow and can give it a totally different personality even. So that is our bow for today. Again, this is Nancy with MumMum's, and we will talk with you later. Have a good one.